tonight's project is a pair of cards, and if you were with me for my Paper Pumpkin Zoom session on Monday, this card format will look familiar, but I'm going to show you how I use templates to select the correct size dies and use those same templates to get good placement when I'm stamping with the Stamparatus. So I've got a couple of these started, but I don't have the sentiments done yet because I'm going to show you that technique tonight for using those templates. But I have 2 cards. Where did I put everything? I am going to assemble 2 cards just to show you how I put these together. Again, without the sentiments, because we're going to do the sentiments after we get these cards put together. So I'm going to lay that aside for now. So here are the pieces you'll need for making these 2 cards. And these are super easy to make together, so you might as well make 2. If you're going to make 1, make 2. This is the Designer Series paper that I'm using, and that should be your the first thing you pick out is your Designer Series paper. And I'm using a paper from the Fine Art Floral Designer Series paper pack. I just got this probably 2 weeks ago now, and I've really been enjoying using it. It's a very textured look. It's not textured, but it looks textured because they photographed the artwork, and it was real heavy impasto painting, and that shows up in the paper. And what I have here are 2 pieces that are cut 1 1/4 by, let's see, oops, I've covered up my notes. I have 2 pieces that are 1 1/4 by 4 5/8. 1 1/4 by 4 5/8. And then I have 2 pieces that are 1 1/4 by 4 3/16. 1 1/4 by 4 3/16. And you'll see why they're cut that way in a second. So that's your Designer Series paper. So once you have your Designer Series paper picked out, use it to determine the rest of your colors. Choose a coordinating color for your card base, and I chose Terracotta Tile. That's one of the colors in this paper for my card base. And I cut 2 from an 8.5 by 11. These are 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card bases. And then I chose a second coordinating color to use for this piece. Now on this card I kept this the same as the card base, but on the samples I'm making right now for you, I chose a second color. And it is, what is this? I believe this is olive green, old olive, not olive green, old olive. And I don't know if you can see this, but I've run these through the embossing machine, and I used the Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder on them. And the reason I did that is sometimes when cardstock doesn't have anything on it, it looks a little bland. I mean, this is cute. I really like this card, but you can jazz things up a little bit by just putting some texture on that cardstock. Now, I made a few other samples earlier where I did not emboss, but I added some gems to that cardstock. Just something to break up that solid color. Another option would be to use the 6x6 Designer Series paper that is tone on tone. Let me grab one here. So this is the 6x6 Brights Designer Series paper, and you can see it has, it's not texture that you can feel, but it has visual texture because it has words on it. It almost reads as a solid, but not quite, because there's something else on it. So those are the 6x6 Designer Series paper, and they come in all the color families, the brights, the regals, the subtles, the neutrals. So those are good choices too. But I'm using a solid cardstock here, and I textured it by running it through the embossing machine. So that's that piece. And then We need 2 pieces. Remember, we're making 2 cards. We need 2 pieces of Whisper White cardstock. Actually, this is basic white in 3 1/4 by 5. 2 of those. Those will be used on the front. And we only need one of these, a 3 1/2, see, 3 1/2 by 4 for one of the insides of the cards. We're going to do something different on the other one. So this is 3 1/2 by 4. All right, so I'm going to set everything aside because the first thing I'm going to do is a little bit of stamping. I'm just going to do some random stamping across these. And here's a sample. I'm going to stamp from the top left down to the bottom right corner with a flower that I chose from the In Bloom. All right, so I'm using a small flower from this In Bloom stamp set, this one right here. And this is just random stamping. Oops, and I already messed up. Didn't quite get that. Because this is photopolymer, I'm going to see if I can stamp over top of that perfectly. There we go, got it, okay. So I want to go off the edges if I'm near an edge. Just to add some interest. And there's no rhyme or reason to this, you just random stamp from the top left to the bottom right. I'm trying to save my little mat here, so I'm using scrap underneath. Just like that, and then I'll do the other one. So I'm going to assemble these, and we'll do the sentiments last. I'll just quickly put these together. I'm going to attach one of these stamped panels to the front of the card. And I'm just using Stampin' Seal tonight, keeping it pretty simple. Just centering this on the front. And then I'll take one of the longer strips. Don't use the short one. These are the 2 long ones. You see, one of these is shorter. So you want the longer strips for the front of your card. And you're just going to center it on that panel in the lower, I'd say, third of the card. I'm trying to decide if there's really an up and a down to this pattern. I don't think there is. This piece is going to go right here, but before I adhere it, I want to tie a bit of ribbon around it. Here's what I'm doing. I'm tying a bit of ribbon, and I'm using terracotta tile ribbon. I believe this came in the Ornate Garden Suite from the annual catalog. And I'm tying a simple square knot tonight. I'm not doing a bow. I'm just tying a simple square knot. So I go left over right. And I'll get my handy dandy tweezers. And right over left. Oops. Just like that. And I find if I don't pull the knot too tight, it looks a little prettier. And I'll just trim these off so they don't look as frayed. There we go. So that's going to get adhered on the left side of this strip. And I can adjust where the ribbon is. I like the ribbon to be near the top of this strip, kind of like that. But you can put it wherever you like it. Oh. Okay. And then on the inside of this one, I'm just going to have one of the shorter strips, so make sure I have a shorter one, one of the shorter strips, and this is why we cut it to 4 3/16. This card is 4 1/4, but some of that gets taken up with the fold, so I cut it just a little bit short because I'm going to put it up and down on the left hand side here, and I'll line up the bottom, and then the top will hit just below that fold, which is what I want. So I'm gonna just look at the bottom here and line it up, and then I'll just keep this even to get it straight, and it hits just below the fold, which is perfect. And on this one I'm going to put the smaller of the white rectangles. This rectangle was cut to 3 1/2 by 4, and so I'm gonna adhere it right here. This is what it's going to look like on the inside on this card, and I'll explain the difference in a minute. One of these is going to be a birthday card, and one is going to be a thinking of you card. And the birthday card has this white, just plain white rectangle inside, a liner inside. So there's that one ready for the sentiment. So I'm going to set it aside, and now I'm going to assemble the other one. There we go. So this card will be the Thinking of You card, and it's going to have a sentiment tag inside that is not stamped yet. That's going to go just like that. So that's what we're going to work on next. We're going to work on stamping our sentiments, and I'm going to show you how I use templates to get the correct size dies and get a good placement when I'm using the Stamparatus. So I'm using dies from the Tasteful Labels die set. This is part of the Tasteful Touches bundle. And this is a really great set of sentiment dies, all different sizes. And I have taken a few that I use most often, and I've made templates. I've just cut a rectangle and then cut out from the center the die shape. So this is this one right here. I have that one and that one, and I just wrote on these which set they're from, because I don't know about you, but when I'm in the middle of crafting, my table fills up with things that I have not put away. And so by writing just the set that these are from, it helps me later when I'm gathering things up and replacing them, putting them back where they go. There, you can see I have 4 of these that I use most often, templates cut. And the way that I use these is take them to the stamp set. And today I'm using the Happy Thoughts stamp set, and I just hold the template over the sentiment that I think I want to use and determine whether it's a good fit. I wanted to point something out to you about the size of images on stamp cases. Many times the images are shown at 100%. What you see on the stamp case is exactly the size of what's going to stamp on your paper. But sometimes, in order to fit all of the images on the front of the case, Stampin' Up! Has to reduce the size of them. And you will know whether they've been reduced by looking down here in the corner. I don't know if you can see right there it says images at 90, what does that say? 95%. So if the stamp case does not have anything written down there in that corner, you know these are 100% size images. If it does have something down here, you know these images have been reduced. So if you're using your templates to size things and you know these images have been reduced, you want to flip the case over and use the actual stamps to size your templates, or to choose the right size die with your templates, because what fits on the front may not fit if you're looking at the actual stamp. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. Be careful that you're working with 100% size images. Either there's nothing on the front, or safe thing to do is to always use the back and size from the stamps themselves. I've seen demonstrators make these out of black paper, and honestly, that's better because with the black you have more contrast and you can see easier what's inside that opening. But I made mine out of white, and so that's what I'm going with. I've even seen demonstrators, I think it's Tammy Beard at Stampin' Savvy, made a whole set of these, and she put all of hers on the same size cardstock and punched holes in them and has them on a ring, and they're all labeled, so she can just take that whole ring of templates to any stamp set and just kind of shuffle through them and see which die will work. And then she has the name of the die set on each card, on each template, so she knows where to find that die. So I've determined that Happy Birthday will fit in this, and I also want to make a Thinking of You card, and I determined that it will fit inside of this die. For the inside of my Thinking of You card, I wanted to send some happy thoughts your way, and so I auditioned a couple of these. This one actually works, but I wanted it to fill up more of the inside of the card, so I went with the slightly larger one, this one. So I know that this die will work. And so what I've done is I've cut out, I've cut out one of each of these that I'm going to stamp on. Okay, this will be my Happy Birthday, this will be my Thinking of You, and this will be the big sentiment inside, just wanted to send some happy thoughts your way. And I'm going to show you how I use the templates to get the placement on the Stamparatus when I stamp it now. So I'm going to clear some of my stuff away. I'm just going to put these back in the envelope, and I just keep these templates in a cut off envelope inside the packet that the dies are in. These are the dies. I'm just going to pop this in here. That's where they live, just like that. And I'm going to get my Stamparatus out. I'm just supporting this plate with another stamp case that keeps it level, so when I'm inking it up, it's not sagging down. So the first two I'm going to stamp will be the Thinking of You and the Happy Birthday. Alright, so I'm just going to lay these down on my paper, and I have just plain white printer paper on my Stamparatus. And the reason is because the grid paper kind of interferes with being able to see if things are straight. For me it does. Now that may not bother you, but that's why I use plain paper here. So I'm just going to lay these down. They don't have to be straight at this point. You're not making these straight. You're just laying them down, and you're going to pick them up with your plate. And I'm going to use the same ink that I'm going to stamp with. First, you're going to stamp these on this white paper. So I'm just going to lightly ink up. This is just for placement, so I don't need to be real particular about inking up. So I'm going to stamp those. Now I take my templates and I lay them over the stamped image, And you can see how if I had that grid paper in there, it can kind of interfere with your ability to see if you have the template lined up around the stamped sentiment. So I like to use little sticky notes here just to hold the template in place. You can lay a magnet on your template. And I might use a magnet there on that one. And then the happy birthday one, need to grab that template, is this one, and I'm just going to lay it up here. Center it. Now these are overlapping a little bit. I don't think that's going to hurt anything. So I'm just looking at this and making sure it looks straight in the template. Okay, and then get some more sticky notes. So I have everything in place now. Now what I do is I take these pre-cut tags. I've already cut these out using the dies so they fit inside these templates. So you can see how you can easily do multiples this way. Once you get all this set up, you could do a dozen of these tags that say thinking of you just by placing a template on your Stamparatus, having your tag pre-cut, and then putting it in that negative space for that tag. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to lay this in, and I'm going to lay in this happy birthday one. There we go. That one's in there. So now I'm going to ink up and stamp these, and if I don't get them stamped just perfect the first time, that's okay. I can come back and stamp them again. They look pretty good the first time. I like using my take your pick tool to just pick these out of there without crinkling up the cardstock. You see how easy that was? I love that. And again, I could make several of these at one time while I have it set up. But what I'm going to do next is the big sentiment inside the card. Okay, so I'm going to set these aside. I like to stick them on the outside of the stamp case. That tells me that I need to go back and clean them thoroughly when I'm finished. And then I'm going to grab the big sentiment. Just wanted to send some happy thoughts your way. Now because I've already stamped here and here, I'm just going to lay this one here in the middle so I have a clean spot to work. I'm going to pick it up and stamp real quick so I know where to place my template. And this is the template I'm using for this big sentiment. So I'm going to lay this over that and just kind of eyeball it, and when it looks like I have it centered and straight, I'll just put some sticky notes on it. And then I'll grab my pre-cut tag and just pop it in there and ink up. Alright, so I'm going to stamp this once and hopefully only once. And that looks pretty good. This is a nice juicy stamp pad, so I'm getting good stamps the first time. Now all we have to do to finish our cards is put these sentiments on. I'm going to put the happy birthday one on first, and I don't know if you remember, but I said it would go on the one with the big blank rectangle inside. I like to write a note on my birthday card, so I don't usually put a sentiment inside. And I'm gonna set this just so that it's partly on this strip and partly off, and I'm gonna pop it up on dimensionals. And when I finish this, I'm going to show you what to do if you have a strip of designer series paper that has a white background. I'm going to show you a card I made, basically reversing colors. But when you put this on, when you put your Stampin' Dimensionals on, you want to stay away from where this embossed piece is underneath. So I'm just going to flip it over, and I know I want to stay away from this edge. And now we're going to do our Thinking of You. So this will go on the inside, and I'm just going to let it overlap that strip just a little bit. And then on the front, the same thing, I'm going to pop this up on dimensionals, and I'm going to stay away from that left edge so that I can overlap a little bit. Okay, 2 cards. Happy birthday, you can write your own sentiment. And Thinking of You, just wanted to send some happy thoughts your way. All right, so I mentioned, what if you have a designer series paper that has a white background? So this paper is also from the Fine Art Floral designer series paper, and what I did was I simply reversed the colors. Instead of using the white inside here, I used the coordinating solid cardstock inside and put the white as the card base. And that lets this paper just pop. I used the same color ink as the cardstock, and I believe this is Mossy Meadow. But if you do not have the same color ink, you can use Versamark ink, which is the ink we use to do our heat embossing with. It makes a watermark on any cardstock you stamp on. And a watermark is just something that's a little darker than what it's stamped on. So that's how I did these. And then on the inside, I stamped off once and stamped on the cardstock, but I also put just a matte behind the white on the inside of the Happy Birthday so that it would be set off from the white cardstock. And the stamping, I think, also helps set it off from the white background. And then on this one, I put in a rectangle. Instead of the white rectangle, the 3.5 by 4, I put in the solid cardstock and put this piece on top of that. If you have a designer series paper that has a white background or a lot of white in it, you can still use this format. You just have to switch the colors. Thank you for watching today. Be sure to subscribe while you're here so that you can easily find future videos that I post on my channel. I will have a link in the description of this video that you can use to visit my online store and shop for the items that I've shared with you today.